Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Snapshot, episode 81. I'm Brendan Patrick, joined always by Marvel Snap phenom KM Best. KM, your week in Marvel Snap?
Pretty normal week. It's been interesting post OTA because I think I've sort of arrived at the conclusion that there are like one or two decks that are like sort of meta defining, and then there's a bunch more that are viable. And I think that this is interesting because Arishem is originally this thing that looked very oppressive and ridiculous, and it still kind of is, but a lot of that oppressiveness and ridiculousness is locked into Loki, is locked into Dr. Octopus, is locked into Leech. And that means that like a lot of the time you are going to be able to play a normal game of Marvel Snap against them. And I think that is like a fairly interesting and notable situation.
Yeah, for sure. I would definitely agree with that. I've been looking at the Silky Smooth deck or Move deck recently, especially with Hydra Bob getting pushed to a 1-5. I was like, okay, can I play this card now? By the way, they switched that card like last minute.
Yeah,
they did tweet about it.
About that, by the way.
Yeah. Well, let's just jump right into it. So they did tweet about it. I didn't see the tweet, but Kawa actually pinged me on Discord. And he was like, "Hey, they're doing exactly what you guys talked about in the podcast last week." Ha ha ha! I was like, "Oh shit! I need to buy this card for its 6,000 tokens," and I was able to snag it. But I would say that if I was okay, so we can talk about potentially the proper way to communicate that, et cetera, et cetera. But if I had not gotten that card and it cost me 6,000 tokens, I would have been a bit disappointed. I'm not going to lie. I did get it, and that is the deck I have been experimenting with, playing with. And just before we hop into sort of talking about how to maybe better handle that communication in the future, in regards to the deck's power level, I think it's a really fun deck to play. It puts up some big numbers sometimes. I do find myself getting consistently stat checked by Arishem, which is also a deck that has a lot of tech cards in it. Yeah, it's a deck that has a lot of tech cards in it as well. So I would say stat checked is actually probably not the right word. I'm kind of just getting fucking checked because I'm just getting owned on many different angles, both on tech cards and yeah, I mean, whether it's Dr. Octopus is not a tech card, but whether it's Doc Ock pulling all my shit in and kind of fucking me over there, or I'm getting hit by some Shang-Chi because my, something is now 10 power, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Or I'm just getting outvalued because they played Loki or they played Blob plus Mystique, which is no longer a thing after the OTA. It just feels like the deck is a little bit worse than Arishem, but still very fun. And I think that if, maybe Arishem was able to get a nerf, or if you're just looking to kind of have fun with the move deck, it seems relatively viable. In regards to Hydra Bob, what are your thoughts?
Well, I guess my question is why they feel the need to keep putting themselves in the position that they keep putting themselves in, which is...
That's a good point.
It's one of these things where it's like, there's not a good option. Because if you release a card underpowered, right? And then you buff it later, what you're doing is the best of many bad options, which is to say it is adding... not necessarily an incentive to get that card, but it's trying to tell people, hey, trust that we will buff these cards that are not actually good. You need to trust us, and we will do it when it is necessary. We will make that happen, right? And I think that's a good precedent to set. But the way OTAs work means that the earliest you could possibly do it is the week after. And that means, like, again, in terms of announcing this, how are they supposed to do that? Would you rather they announce it, or would you rather they not? Because based on the timeline, they probably finalized this stuff like Monday, Tuesday for OTAs. And that's when stuff rotates, right? And so when that gets finalized, do you want them to announce it or not? A lot of people are furious that they announced it at all. They're like, oh, they're milking us. Now no one can buy that. But it's like, again, what do you want them to do? Do you want them to just not buff the card at all? I think that's what the answer a lot of people are going to give is they don't want that card to be buffed at all until they can purchase it again in the spotlights. They don't want it to be, they don't want anyone else to get an advantage from having a better card that they didn't have the chance to get. And I don't think that's very viable. I just think of like the combination of the way they do balance, which is to say they want every new card to be good. They will OTA them if they're not. And the way they do economy, which is to say you have to wait 6 months before this card shows up again. This is one of those places where they really conflict.
Yeah. There's one thing that I sort of drew from what you said there, which I don't think you made this point exactly, but I think that the second dinner creates the potentials and the possibilities for pain points when they don't need to. Like, I think a general community sentiment, if they had not buffed the card, would have been neutral or positive, right? It would have not had this sort of blowback.
That's true, because people still get mad at the shit.
I think that people were mad about my Hydra Bob getting released a bit underpowered. It was disappointing, I agree. But by making that announcement with such little time before the OTA and sort of creating this very, very possible scenario of a pain point for a player, someone who missed the message, was busy during the time, couldn't get the card, and then immediately gets slapped with the 6,000 token price on it after it was buffed when it was clearly released underpowered, or what looked to be clearly underpowered. There is going to be a non-zero subset of the population that plays this game that is going to have just feel like they got fucked, right? And my problem is that I do think that the second dinner's intentions here were very, very good. And I think that they looked at this and they thought that this was a good idea. And I'm not saying it's not, but you things coalesced in a way that people were going to be put in a scenario where they felt like they got left out, they kind of got cheated, or et cetera, et cetera. And I think we can avoid that. And maybe I would say maybe the correct thing is to not buff it in that scenario. Maybe that's
not a realistic option, right? Because their goal here is to set the precedent that they are going to buff a card. So that, like, basically they don't want people listening to me about what card is good, what card is meta, why would I buy this card. They want people buying the cards they like and trusting the company to make sure that they're going to be as strong as they can without being broken. That's what they want.
Yeah, I think it's unfair. I think it's unfair for me to say, oh, they should have just announced it earlier, or they should have just, they should have given us more time on it, because clearly that's a better answer. But it's the variable of X is to what extent, and I don't know to what extent could they have announced that or changed Hydra Bob, or pretty much everything that happened. To what extent, to what amount of time did we need before it wouldn't piss people off? I think 1 hour. I think 1 hour is clearly it was relatively 1 hour. I think I don't know the exact time.
It was like an hour, but here's the thing.
Yeah,
as I understand it, the way in which that got announced was because they thought it would be better to announce it while it was still in the caches than when it wasn't. Again, people are complaining about, oh, you announced it with an hour left. Would it have been better to just not announce it then and then buff without telling anybody, and then nobody gets a chance of getting it when it's being buffed?
There's two answers to that question, though. I think would it have been better? No. For me, as a person, as a player, as a person who engages with the ecosystem, PR wise, would it have been better? I don't know.
We've had that before, and everyone got mad the same way. Oh my God, you guys buffed Gladiator, now I can't get it. Oh my God, you guys buffed US Agent, now I can't get it. We know that doesn't work. Or at least we know people are going to be the same amount of mad. I think that this is a situation where it's like they put themselves, because of the varying incentives that their teams have, in a no-win situation. There is no way they could have managed this in a good way. There is not a good answer here. There are only a bunch of different bad answers, and people will end up the same amount of mad at whatever bad thing is happening, because there will always be a bad thing happening. Because let's assume OTAs are finalized on Monday, announced, or like we're really sure about them on Tuesday, right? Okay, so it's Tuesday. It's I don't know, 12 noon for me. It's 9 a.m. beginning of the workday for second dinner, right? Because they're in Pacific time, I'm in Eastern. And so the first thing you do is look at that and be like, should we talk about Hydra Bob? You go into a meeting, you try to pitch it to whoever it is that runs the communications. You're like, okay, hey, let's talk about Hydra Bob. Let's get that out there. They get that out there. They move it literally as fast as you possibly can, and it arrives at this.
Yeah, I think that there's a deeper conversation to be had if the bureaucratic systems that exist in
it's not a bureaucratic system.
Dinner.
It's like
that is a bureaucratic system.
No, it's literally just like someone has an idea and has to go talk to the communications guy before they just say it, right? Like, that's just like a really basic thing to do, is the guy who runs your communications, which is Griffin right now. You probably have to talk to Griffin before you announce stuff.
I think that depending on the severity of the blowback for their actions, that process could or could not change. If the blowback for such said action was the game dies, then they would change said process. Sounds like said process is potentially not well suited for.
But like the fastest they could have gotten this out, let's say they announced it 3 hours before Bob rotates out of the cache. Everyone's going to say the same
that's
shit.
That's the variable, right? The X variable of like what arbitrary amount of time would have pissed people off less.
Yeah, like everyone's going to say the same shit no matter what happens. There's not a good solution here.
But I preface this with even me as a player. I was happy they announced it because I bought the fucking card. I was happy. But I did feel like... So we can take a step away from happy or mad about said decision. And I think we can... I would say that this decision looks incompetent. Like I did feel like it was a bit incompetent. That I had 1 hour. I had to get this. Yeah, I had to get this through like a back channel. Somebody told me I was in the fucking sauna, and I was like, "Oh, my phone is overheated. I have to wait for it to cool down so I can go buy the fucking card." You know, all that good stuff. And barely got my Bob. It did feel incompetent, and I do think that the amount of time, if they had increased it, would have decreased my sentiment of incompetence. But I also don't know if that matters. You're right. You're right that community sentiment is going to be similar. Almost regardless what they do. But surely there's an extent to which they can improve this process, I would hope.
I don't think there is. I think it's a situation where they're just screwed. They're screwed forever because of the ways in which they have done what they've done.
You think they ever take that nihilist approach and they're like, fuck it, we're just not going to say it anymore. It's just too much blowback.
I would. If I were them, if I were them, I would be like, damn, we tried to do something nice and everyone just like shit all over it. I'd be like, okay, I guess we're not doing that
Isn't
anymore.
That quintessentially Marvel Snap, though, is making like general improvements to the game or the economy, and then the actual community reception is overwhelmingly negative?
I don't think that's necessarily true. I think a lot of the time it's an issue of communication and like the way they talk about stuff. This is an unsolvable one. There's no good comms you can put on this. If you finalize OTAs Monday or Tuesday, there's never a time that isn't a crunch time to tell people you're buffing the card that's currently in the caches. It's always going to be a crunch. And we're talking about 3 or 4 hours versus 1. Like, this is not a realistic way to do that because they have to wait as long as possible. Even if it's an easy OTA change, like, let's just give this guy 1 more power, right? Even if that's an easy thing to do, you still have to make sure it's actually justified. Like, remember when I had Glenn on my my YouTube channel, we talked about Pixie, and I think he might have talked about it here too, where this is a card he wants to buff. But right now, and since it's released, it's actually just been a little bit too good to justify the buff. And so, like, even in situations where you're like, I think we want to buff this card, you can't be sure until you look at, like, okay, people aren't buying this card is not performing well, people aren't using this card, and then you're like, all right, well, let's do that, right? Let's set the precedent. Again, it seems like a long-term effort to set a precedent that you should buy the cards you like, and they will do their best to make them good.
I want to have another conversation about another contentious issue that is also potentially unsolvable and relatively unimportant, but I do think that this is going to be something that, you know, a lot of people thought about recently when this came out, and that's the 12 black matte borders for a solid $99.
I thought about buying that. I'm still thinking about it.
Bro, I'm still thinking about it. I got all that gold stacked up for when I bought those bundles. I'm considering it because I was also like, hey, let me see this on an ink card. Looks pretty fucking good. That being said, we've talked about this before. It's like the pricing of cosmetics doesn't matter. Does it not matter? Is there certain values that it becomes too expensive, that it becomes, you know, predatory, where it is distasteful? That's a good word for it. Is there a level to where it's distasteful? Because the overwhelming sentiment of everybody who plays the game and engages as a customer will pretty much always be in perpetuity, make it cheaper. Make it arbitrarily cheaper as well. That being said, I do think that cosmetics and customization of cards is one of the strong points of Marvel Snap. It's one of the best ways to engage with the game, especially on a casual level. You build this collection and you have this affinity for your cards and your deck. And I think the borders are a cool new aspect to that, especially these unique borders. And I'm not gonna lie, I love I think they're really fucking cool. They look really cool. But the $99 price tag or 8,000 gold, It did disappoint me a little bit. I don't know if it disappoints me enough to, actually irritate me or to, make me feel a certain way about the publisher. But I do wish that card cosmetics and, being able to make my collection feel like my own didn't feel like I was actually getting exploited or destroyed by the company financially. Like, I would like to lean more into that aspect of the game. And I feel like with a $99 price tag, that's a little bit too much. That being said, despite this entire little rant, I don't feel that passionate about it, to be honest. It's whatever.
I'm with you. I don't really care. Like, there's obviously a number, right? I one thing I see a pretty decent amount is people who are like very mad that a cosmetic they want is too expensive. Like,
yeah.
It almost feels like just I don't want to say like abusive relationship, because that like has a lot of connotations, but there's this dynamic of like, people who are engaging in purchasing cosmetics know that it's bad for them. And like, when the number on it is too high, they feel some amount of shame, and that shame triggers an anger like reaction. And I guess I don't want to get like too into like, my bullshit psychoanalysis.
The psychoanalysis of cosmetics. Yeah.
I just don't get being mad at the number on a cosmetic. I just don't get it. It doesn't make any sense to me.
You think disappointment is appropriate, or is it also equally?
As long as you're honest that what you're actually mad about is you can't afford it.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair.
I think a lot of people aren't honest about that. I think a lot of people are like, this is a scam. How dare they charge this much? And what you actually mean is, I would pay $10 for this, but I would not pay $100 for this.
Yeah, and I think that's where I'm at. It is disappointing to me though, because I do feel like this is one of the stronger aspects of the game, and I would enjoy more ways to make my cards feel unique to me, and to especially decks that I have an affinity for, to feel more personalized. I would love that, and I feel like they kind of expanded into that with the borders and being able to make custom cards, but they decided to put, in my opinion, a grossly high paywall behind that stuff. And it's for me it is just ultimately kind of sad. It doesn't affect my ability to play the game and enjoy the gameplay, but yeah, there's just an extent where I'm like, come on, does it really have to be like that? Like, I already feel like I'm paying so much for the actual gameplay of it, for the actual card power level, card power, things like that. It's like, I just wish some of the stuff on the back end was more accessible. That being said, they also came out with another thing. I don't know if this is new this week. I do believe it is new, though. They started putting cash variants into the store for 2,400.
Cash, CACHE, not CASH. Let's make that clear.
Yeah. I wish we could buy some cards for cash. Loan shark business. I know that you definitely don't have a strong opinion on that. But
none. The opposite of a strong opinion. I have, like, I see people talking about it, and like the two opinions I see are, one, 2,400 is too much, how dare they? And two, check out this sick variant I just bought. Like, those are the two types of posts I see about this crap. It's
arbitrary
crazy.
Number is too high. Please make it up.
Please, favorable outcome, low. Please.
True. I do think when they first came out with Spotlight exclusive variants, like that, there was an aspect, like there is like a rarity to that, and it feels very unique. And some people, it's kind of like Ultimate variants, which I guess they still exist in the shop, but I don't know who the fuck buys them, except for you and Lambie.
Sometimes. I do not buy them. I have bought one.
Yeah.
One ever.
That went down. But sometimes if your favorite card came up and it had a Spotlight cash variant, maybe you would hit it. You're like, maybe I'll roll extra, even though I got the card for the week. And
maybe
those variants did feel special, and selling them in the shop does feel a bit cheap. I really don't feel strongly about it.
That's what you're saying right now, right? Selling them in the shop feels a bit cheap. That means they should be charging more than 2,400 gold for them.
Potentially. Or I guess maybe myself and a lot of players had the assumption that they were going to be exclusive and they were going to be rare, and in that sense they were going to feel a bit more special.
They have always been explicit that they were going to put them in the shop at some point. They've always said, like, we will probably get these in, we will get these into, like, not just caches at some point. But they were always like a year out, and now it's like a year out.
I think in gaming, especially for games that I like play a lot, I do like those like stretch or kind of reach goals of cosmetics where you can, I don't know, it just feels cool. Maybe it's rooted in ego, but to have that special thing that you got because you were either, you played back in the day or you grinded really hard for it.
Yeah, we've talked about your League of Legends cosmetic.
True, we have talked about my League of Legends cosmetic. OG right there. Anybody wants to buy that League account?
Okay, so now we really get down to it, right? Oh, look at my incredible cosmetic. It's really about the monetary value.
Holds value.
It's a store of value. It's like booty coin.
It's like booty coin. I will sell it for booty coin. Anyway, let's talk about the OTA. Let's get back into gameplay here. So we had a pretty banger OTA here. This is the July 18th OTA. We had Blob changed to lose its ongoing text, which most notably means that you can not copy it with Mystique, which is very powerful in the Arishem deck. Notably, Mockingbird hit a nerf from a 5/9 to a 6/10, so it can be hit by Shang-Chi, Hydra Bob, 1/4 to 1/5. And then the other ones, not as relevant. Lockjaw had a pretty significant change. Lockjaw is no longer once per turn, I believe. So is that the old version? What was it, a 4/5? Okay, so it's a 4/4 now instead of a 4/5. So Lockjaw's been semi-reverted. So a hit monkey buff, slight werewolf buff. And those were kind of the notable ones for me. Do you want to speak specifically towards the Blob and Mockingbird changes?
Yeah, so the Blob one doesn't seem like it's doing a lot to me. I think it's a consequence again of like when we look at like what OTAs are and why they and when they're finalized and all of that, right? Let's say they're finalized around Monday, Tuesday. I think that's a bit generous, honestly. I'd guess that they're finalized a little bit earlier than that, if I had to guess. But let's say they're finalized around Monday. That means that whatever change they made, let's say it's probably been in process for like 2 or 3 days, which means the process on that change started Thursday, maybe something like that, right? So when you're looking at that, you're looking at reacting to a metagame of a week ago. And Arishem decks are only 2 weeks old now. So they're reacting to basically week 1 Arishem decks. And now Arishem decks are a little more sophisticated, a little more advanced, a little different. And so they end up nerfing something that a lot of the decks aren't playing right now.
Yeah. I felt like the Mystique Blob interaction was powerful, but it wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't overwhelming in a sense. Like you said, we've even kind of deck built out of it at this point. So I think a relevant nerf, but ultimately it's not going to change kind of the metagame too much. What about this Mockingbird from a 5/9 to a 6/10? A clear nerf here and opening it up to be a Shang-Chi target as well.
It is a clear nerf. I think the biggest hit here is to just randomly running Mysterio Mockingbird. You're now going to need either more support or more reasons to do that. So I have like 2 separate mid-range decks. One of them is, but they're both like in the Athena shell. One is an Ajax deck, one is a Gwenpool deck. And they had different reactions to Mockingbird's nerf, and I think that's worth talking about because you have Mockingbird's nerf telling you one of 2 things. 1, let's get this out of the deck. 2, let's invest further into it because now you have to. So the Ajax deck said, let's get this out of the deck. I cut Mysterio Mockingbird, which was the only package the only thing I was doing to justify the Mockingbird was Mysterio Mockingbird. And I replaced it with Juggernaut and Sage, just good cards that did what the deck was already looking to do. The other version is taking, instead of being like, oh, I'm going to cut Mysterio Mockingbird, I'm going to lean further into being a good Mysterio deck, play Gwenpool, play Sasquatch, and then I have more reasons to include Mysterio and Mockingbird in my deck. And I think that those are like the 2 ways you're going to see people reacting to the Mockingbird thing. It's going to be a bit less of a free roll and a bit more of okay, I have to go out of my way and actually justify why this card is in my deck just a little bit more.
Do you think it's still a free roll in a deck like Arishem, though?
Yeah, I do. But it's like less. It's like also notably, Nick Fury generates it now. That's really good.
Yeah, no kidding. Wow, I didn't even think about that interaction. Wow. Yeah, that's the funny part is I did feel like it hurt the mid-range shells a lot, but then didn't really affect, other than being a Shang-Chi target now, it didn't really affect the Arishem decks, which were also playing it to high efficacy. What are What are your thoughts on Hydra Bob moving from 1/4 to 1/5? A card we spoke about last week. We, jokingly, or I kind of jokingly introduced it as maybe the worst card ever released. Clearly not at 1/4, but 1/5 seems powerful. We look at, what is kind of what is an analog we can draw to? I would say Silk. Silk is a 2/5, and it's kind of used to be sort of a stat. Like a big, well-statted card, because it does have a significant downside, unreliably moving across the board constantly. And now we have Hydra being a one cost 5 with what is his ability a downside? Is it an upside?
His ability is an upside, but it's like a very marginal one. But compare him to Tanya or to Martyr, and it becomes clear that he's the one that's like the most easily splashable. Where it's just like, this is a card that can do a lot of stuff for you, mostly just being a 1/5. But we've kind of gone away from 5+1 being like a dominant thing that you do. And a lot of the 5+1 decks right now are Kitty Pride decks. So you look at it and you're like, I'm not sure why I would need it. I think this sort of really demonstrates, rather than anything else, it demonstrates how hard it is to make a 1-drop in Marvel Snap because of the way power is scaled, right? You look at a 1/4 that is double the vanilla rate, and it's borderline unplayable. And I think if you did double the vanilla rate at basically any other stat line, it would at least be competitive, right? When you look at like Gilgamesh talking about that being like 18 power with work being put into it, that's double the vanilla rate of a 5-drop, right? When you look at what Darkhawk was at 4, very powerful card, often double the vanilla rate of 4/12 as opposed to a 4/6 in the thing. Gladiator at 3/8 as opposed to 3/4. At every other stat line, doubling the vanilla rate works. At every other stat line. Here's the funny bit, though. I think that if you doubled the vanilla stat, like I look at like if you double the vanilla stat line for 2s, it would end up being like insanely strong. Where doubling the vanilla stat line for 1s is not.
Yeah.
Because like a 2 would be like a 2/6. That's White Widow. That'd be an insanely good card. Everyone would be playing the 2/6, right? Everyone would be playing. A lot of people would be playing 3/8, right? But nobody's playing the 1/4. And it's like, if they just made Hydra Bob come out and he was 2/6 same text, this card is awesome. Awesome. But because he costs 1, he's bad. And I don't really know how to unpack that because like 1s are, I don't really know why they're so bad. I think it's because like including low impact cards in your deck is bad, right?
Yeah, I mean there's a static variable across all of these cards, despite what the power and cost is. And one is that they cost a card in your deck, and the other one is that they take up space on the board. So
yeah.
Those values, like those static values of the card, they never change, and they get exponentially less. Like not exponentially less for the terms of it taking up a slot in your deck, but as you get to higher cost, more impactful cards, you take less of an opportunity cost of it being a card in your deck, and also it taking up a slot because it's more impactful. So I think that's why these 1 costs can be kind of bad. It's like while they're cheaper and they have like relevant in terms of like a ratio, like a power to cost structure, they still are occupying that draw step that you're taking to draw that card at some point in the game. And they take up the same amount of board space as well.
Yeah, it's weird for me to think about, honestly, because it feels like something that should be good, but isn't.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't really talked about it as a 1/5. Like, you talk about doubling the vanilla rate at 1/4 definitely wasn't good enough, or seemingly. But what about 1/5 now?
I still kind of think it's not good enough, which is, again, like, that's insane, right? That's an insane thing to think. That, like, oh, okay, this is no longer good enough. How is that possible? How is that possible?
It's interesting. Any chance that it is good enough and just kind of is getting overshadowed by some of these Arishem decks?
Maybe, but like, isn't that the context in which something would be good enough or not good enough?
I think some people look at the context of Arishem as something that is fleeting in nature, that surely cannot stay around, surely must leave at some point. Obviously, we have Cassandra Nova coming as well. So I think that is kind of why you can have the conversation under... Like, people frame conversations under those parameters because they do believe Arishem is not a card that will exist at its current power level, agnostic of some sort of counter card coming in and it being changed in the future, right? It's just overwhelmingly powerful.
Maybe that's right, but I don't want to hang my hat on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, we did have a new card released this week as well. That was Ajax. Ajax is a 5/7 and says ongoing +1 power for each card in play afflicted with negative power. What were your thoughts? How did this one land, especially post buff? Would it have been playable at all if it had not been buffed?
At 5/5, no. At 4/4, I think this card might have actually just been busted. Like, this is a card that I think is already honestly quite solid. I think this card is a reasonable, powerful inclusion in a lot of different Marvel Snap decks right now. And, I mean, granted, most of those decks are just, it's generic mid-range deck number 57. But, like, Ajax is basically a 2-card combo with Hazmat. And I think a lot of people looked at this card and were like, I need to play him with every card that says give minus power. And I think a lot of people were wrong about that because it's like saying, oh, I need to play Gilgamesh with every card that gives plus power. No, you don't. You just play Blue Marvel. You don't need to do that. You don't need to do that at all. You need to play, like, basically the gap between how good Hazmat is with this card and how good literally every other card that says afflict minus power is with this card is insane. It's massive. It's a huge gap. It's one of the biggest gaps other than like the Blue Marvel thing in the entire game. It's an enormous, insanely large gap. And so for that reason, just a lot of people seemed to be making suboptimal decisions about how to play this card early in its lifespan.
Interesting. Yeah. Well,
one of the few decks I feel very confident to Arishem with is the Athena mid-range deck with Hazjax in it.
Should I buy it?
You? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, wait a little bit on it, but like
I'm waiting till Monday.
It's like very possible that like that deck is replaceable. Like if you have Sasquatch and Gwenpool, you might not need Ajax. That's like a fairly good side grade if you're going to be doing that instead. Yeah. But the card is a card I think people are going to be like, damn, I wish I'd picked that guy up to some degree.
I really think that we have to like take these cards to the green. I know you said you wouldn't hang your hat on it, but I have to look at these cards in the context that potentially Arishem will not be the most dominant strategy in Marvel Snap at some point, whether due to a counter card or due to it getting nerfed. And if something is existing far above like the sort of normal cost to value curve at 5/7, with
it's not far above. It's just like compare it to Darkhawk Ronin, right? Or Darkhawk and Ronin. It's like it's one of those cards. Mm-hmm. If one of those cards was it's if I had to guess, honestly, I felt that it's better than Darkhawk right now, and Darkhawk has like the upside of being an Arishem deck because Ajax is simply not vulnerable to Shang-Chi, right? And you can just drop surprise Ajaxes on people with Hope Summers, right? So like you have these like final turns that are like you have 7 or 8 energy and you just play, Hazmat Ajax out of nowhere on the final turn of the game. And they have no idea because you're not doing anything else that would give them any indication that you're doing that. Like you're not playing out support cards to make that clear or anything like that. You're just like, oh damn, here's my Ajax.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna keep my eyes peeled on Ajax.
You don't have Athena, right? So like,
no, that's gonna cost me 6,000 tokens. But I literally, at this point, I have to wait for it to. So I'm waiting for it to show up in my shop. It's been taking an egregious amount of time, but I probably missed a few cycles as well. But then also, how do I acquire the motherfucking tokens?
My loan sharking business.
No, but seriously, bro, there's no bundles. Like I'm just waiting because we don't data mine bundles anymore. I'm just waiting for one to pop up with collector tokens. Right now,
what do you mean we don't data mine bundles anymore? Yeah, we do.
Do we? I think you can't data mine them out.
Does that? I'm almost positive.
Interesting. I was looking for bundles the other day, and it was specifically saying like, "Oh, we can't data mine out a person by a certain extent." Or period of time
maybe there's like a length at which that's not possible. I don't know, but I'm fairly certain they still do that. Their bundle page should still be up.
I'll have to take a look at it because when I was looking, it was like, oh, we can't see far into the future anymore. And I was like, fuck, okay. Hopefully Athena comes up at the same time.
Yeah, no, they have upcoming bundles. There's a $75 one that they have marked July 2024 Collector 2 starting on the 23rd. Says 6,000 tokens, 4,000 gold in it.
Okay. Variant.
There's a July 28th one, 7,500 gold that has 6,000 tokens in it, and a Destroyer variant.
Okay.
And yeah, they go about as far as August here, but it seems like they do still data mine bundles on Snapchat.
Right. That's good. Then I should be good to get my Athena. I've been
assuming they release in that form.
Yeah, I've been feeling that pain. Also, assuming I don't buy the matte black borders because, bro, I really want them. I do. I really want them. Pardon my ignorance here, but how does it work when you apply a border to a card? It is permanently on that card now. You can't take it off and put it on other cards. Yeah,
borders apply to one card only, and that's really what's stopping me from doing it.
Yeah, that is painful, eh? Like, what? It's just like forced to put them on Jeff Nocturne. Like, what?
I was thinking that if I did it, what I'd be doing is getting all matte black borders for like one specific archetype, and then every time I play a card outside of that archetype, I switch it back to my purple.
Okay. Yeah. Well, secondary for listening to this, please make the price of matte black borders arbitrarily lower. That'd be great. We would love that. Anyway, on to the Ben and Snap. If you want to get a question read out or comment read out on the next week's podcast, shoot us a comment on YouTube. We'll get it queued up. First one is from Martofel. They say, my favorite, take care of yourself first and have fun playing Snap and creating content for your loyal followers podcast. Rooting for you all to keep going. And we have Canadian Bacon. This Canadian Bacon's an OG. I feel like I read this name off like over a year ago. This is my favorite. KM refuses to answer a hypothetical question podcast. There's a lot. I ask you a lot of like hypothetical questions for areas of Snap that don't affect you. And I'm like, oh, well, what would you think if you were to empathize with the common man? You're like, I can't.
Yeah, you can't make me.
Period.
I refuse to. I have no empathy in me. No, I genuinely think that like there are situations where your perspective is so skewed that anything you say is just going to sound like out of touch or shitty or stupid. And I don't want to be doing that. I don't want to be putting myself on record as saying some dumbass out of touch bullshit when I know for a fact what I'm going to do is say some dumbass out of touch bullshit. Like I'm sorry. I have too many resources. My situation is too unique. And I don't want to just like play pretend about that. I think a lot of people try to be like, oh yeah, I'm like the common man. I'm just like you, but I'm a Marvel Snap streamer. And it's like, no, my incentives are wildly different. And I do a lot to make sure that I don't get blinded by those incentives. But when you ask me to put myself in the shoes of someone who doesn't have every card, who isn't doing a content thing, it's harder for me to actually get into a realistic approximation of that mindset, because even in games I wasn't doing content for, I would always spend to get the best decks. And so I am not like, I don't want to come across like a shill but that's what I would do. Doesn't matter what the game was. Hearthstone, Magic, that's what I would do. And I don't want to sit here on a podcast where people have genuine, real issues with monetization in the game and be like, well, I would simply just spend money. Because it's true. It's what I would do in those situations. But it's just like, I'd be an asshole, I think, if that was my response to that.
Well, fellow members that are also throwing it back for trying to get these goddamn collector tokens and get deck cards like Dina on your deck, I empathize with you because I'm getting fucking owned. I just took a little bit of a break and you fall really far behind. I think that's like the worst thing you can do is be up to date and then fall a few months behind. It's like everything is 6,000 tokens and it's hopelessly coming back in the caches. You're just like, oh my God. Next one's from Mia. They say the extra energy from Arishem is stupidly broken. What do you think?
Oh, that was like the whole sentence? I thought they were going to like explain it.
They also said, I have a 65% win rate with Arishem, Agatha deck. that just plays Agatha on 5.
Hell yeah, brother. Cook. Or sorry. Hell yeah, sibling. Cook. I don't know if it's like stupidly broken. I think it's like fixably broken, right? Like there is a number that you could put on the card that would be balanced for, or at least a close approximation of balanced for however many cards it makes. But I think that one thing that Arishem has really taught me is that like ramp isn't all equal. And like the biggest problems in decks, not in ramp decks for the record, because ramp decks are making a sacrifice of tempo by playing something like Electro. Those are fine. But the biggest problem in decks like Arishem or Thanos, where you're free rolling a specific thing, is the 5s on 4. Because every one of these 5s, Professor X, Dr. Octopus, Leech, they're designed very clearly to be played on the penultimate turn of the game, the turn before the final turn.
Yep.
And when you play them on 4, you are breaking that. You are breaking that horribly. And so, like, when you look at those cards, these are all cards that were in Marvel Snap's base set. They were clearly designed in a world where it was not possible to Thanos time stone them out, to Arishem them out. They were designed in a world where you were making reasonable sacrifices to get it. And when ramp decks like this are good, it is always because they are free rolling those 5s on 4 and not paying a commensurate cost like an Electro deck would be.
100% agreed. 100% agreed. Next one is from Sir Gerber. Gerber. They say, I also entered Infinite a little bit lower than I would have expected after multiple seasons in a row finishing in the top 50. I gotta say, it was a lot more demoralizing than I expected, even when you consider how I nearly only play one deck I love, discard, while being quite oblivious to meta shifts. How has this been affecting you? Is it better now? Is it still hurting?
I'm good. Like, it sucks, but it's like, I'm a content creator. I'll be fine. Like, I don't think it's gonna be all that bad. I'm going to keep being good at the game. I feel like I don't have a lot to prove in terms of that anymore. But it's like weirdly demoralizing to just be like, Jesus Christ, a bunch of people are starting above me for no reason. But I think that was like kind of a first week thing for me. Now I'm getting into this metagame. I'm really sort of suffusing myself in it. And I think Arishem has gotten a little less annoying to me, which is weird because it's become like a Doc Leech deck, but it's like, okay, cool. I know what that snap means. I get it. I understand, right? Like almost all of their snaps are like Loki, Docker, Leech. And so it's becoming more understandable. I'm more able to integrate it into my thought processes. I'm less, annoyed by it right now. And I think that goes a long ways. Like if you're actually having fun playing Marvel Snap, I realize if you watch me stream, you'll probably hear me saying like, "Oh my god, this metagame sucks." That's just because like that like if I'm gonna be 100% honest, it's because I lost a game.
Next one was from Praetorian and said, based on the earlier comment about Cam asking Brennan to externally rotate his arm, I'm guessing Brennan doesn't do external rotations to strengthen his rotator cuff, which could be leading to shoulder pain as he increases his bench numbers. Could also be an earlier injury that has caused some dysfunction in his rotators. And I suggest seeing an osteopath if that's the case. I separated my shoulder and rehabbed it on my own, but noticed a burning pain in my pectoral during bench. Went to see an osteopath. They said they diagnosed it and fixed it with one visit. No pain since. Grab a resistance band and warm up before bench. So that's shoulder pain. I did chest today. You're actually getting worse. I was like, damn, I'm just really tight in my chest and my shoulders. Like I must have just, like maybe it's my back.
Go to a doctor.
Yeah, so it's weird. It's weird because I have a 3rd degree AC separation on my right side, and that feels totally fine. But it's my left side, and it's like I can just stick my finger in it. It feels like this muscle. It's like incredibly tight, and it's very painful. But after I do like a higher bench, it's like, dude, I like barely can move it at all. So I think I might have actually fucked it up. I thought it was tight at first, but now it's very consistent, and I'm like, ugh, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, what was happening to me was I would be like lying on my side, and the act of reaching out to like change the channel or whatever would like hurt my shoulder, and that was when I was like, okay, something's actually wrong.
I'm nowhere near that. It's like if it's like 275 and I let's be honest, I don't really warm up, and I know that's a fault.
Really?
Yeah, I know that. Yeah, I don't know. I just
should.
It's never been. Yeah, it's never been a thing It's never been a thing for
You don't
me.
like
It's
just
never-
putting a plate on there and just like repping out like 30 or 40 of that shit?
Sometimes, but I've recently stopped because I noticed that actually decreased my strength going into the higher lift, even if it was light. Maybe that's very ignorant. Maybe I would just go in. I'd go in so unwarmed up and so tight that it felt light while I was just ripping my my tendons apart or something like that. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm getting older. The shoulder's actually kind of hurting.
No, I think this is like you're describing several things that could lead to shoulder pain very reasonably, like not warming up and not knowing what external rotation is. Like the more you talk about it, the more you're just like I'm just like, yeah, you're doing something. You're bringing something on yourself that is not good. You are setting yourself up for failure.
Yes, true. All right, next one's from Mavic. They say, well, I hope Marvel stuff doesn't go away because I enjoy playing. I will say I definitely enjoy the banter and camaraderie between you two. I would watch us listen, even if it was for a game that didn't play. Honestly, you guys just yapping at each other is good to listen to. Thank you for the hours of enjoyable content. P.S. My daughter listens to this podcast with me. She's 9 months old. She always gets excited to hear Cam's voice since we watch all his videos. Cam's like, oh god. I had a pretty funny experience with something very similar to this on my other podcast. We have this like kind of ridiculous intro. This was the first podcast I ever made, and it's like a professional intro. It's like, you're listening to Arsenal Pass, and somebody sent me a video to our email, and it was his daughter. So his daughter's in the car when he listens to our podcast on the way to like work or somewhere. So he was in his living room and he played it, and his daughter just starts singing the intro and gets like super excited.
It's amazing.
Yeah, that was probably the coolest thing anybody's ever sent to me.
When I was a kid, I was, I guess, fairly infamous for teaching other children swear words, right? And it's nice to know that as an adult, I am still doing that.
Mm-hmm. This one's from Set Camper. Said, Brandon/Braden/Brioden looks exactly like I would have imagined. The only surprise I assumed he was a short king, Wolverine-esque stature.
Whoa!
Oh, that's like a bit, by the way. Do you know this bit at all with me being short? Do you know about it? Okay. Well, I will tell you where it came from. I was unironically at a Flesh and Blood tournament. I was with my friend Zach Bunn. He owns a company called Team Covenant. They're pretty big on like socials, and they're pretty well known. So people come up to him all the time. We're walking out of the tournament venue, and somebody comes up to us. We're like, literally while we're walking, he goes, "Oh, Zach, love your content. You know, like got me into this, got me into that." And he goes, and he finishes his sentence, about to walk out. He goes, "Oh, Brendan, you're a lot smaller than I expected." Walks away, unironic. Never saw him again. That was that. So there's like a permanent bit that I am like
General Grievous. You're shorter than I expected.
I'm like a halfling. So yeah, I don't know if this is part of that bit or if I just have that short sounding voice, I guess. But he said, pretty sure he's over 6 feet. I discovered Cam back in his Magic streaming days, so it was an impression at first sight. As someone who couldn't bench 2 plates for $1 million, you both certainly break the card player mold. And yes, I listened to you guys do a podcast reviewing house cleaning products or maybe even crypto scam. I mean, Web 3.0 projects. Yeah, get it right. Come on, booty coin.
We are a podcast reviewing house cleaning products, so shout out to Ajax.
Yeah, and shout out to Booty Coin. I wish the Booty Coin didn't exist so that I wasn't like...
Yeah, it does. It is frustrating that our joke fake crypto is something some asshole came up with to like rug pull $750,000.
They said, I'm in too deep now. Thanks for the weekly laughs.
I am not over 6 feet. I am exactly 6 feet.
So am I. I'm actually exactly 6 feet.
Exactly
6 feet. Which, by the way, is the worst. It's the worst one to be.
I don't think I am, but there is a distinct possibility that I could be. I know what my driver's license says, but I haven't measured myself in a decade.
I don't know what people think like the worst height to be is, but in my opinion, it is 6 feet tall. I'm not saying like literally, but anybody ever ask you your height?
Everyone thinks you're fucking lying.
Yeah, especially. Yeah, maybe somebody who's you're on a date with or something like that. How tall are you? Like 6 feet. You're like, all right. And you're like, the fuck? People just 5'11" and 6'1" in your world? Like, I at this point, I'm just going to start lying because you say 6'1", no questions. 6 feet, it's like, all right, buddy, come on.
My dad is 6'1". And I know I'm
my-
shorter than him, but it's not by a lot.
My dad's like 5'7", I think. My dad's pretty short, actually.
Smaller than
well,
I expected.
Yeah, smaller than I expected. Next one's from Electric. They say, I think Brendan looks exactly like he sounds like, though it could be any amount of fit. He says, Cam looks exactly like Cam sounds. A lot of people were saying that you look exactly like you sound. Someone said that this was the one from Michael. They say, great shout out on my first watch. Honestly, Brendan, I thought you were a smaller build guy, in parentheses, with a smoking habit. With a smoking habit.
Yo, I thought you were short and addicted.
I totally see the smoking habit. It's pretty bad. And they said, Cam, I can only see you a strong guy because, well, been watching Cam for years.
Yeah, all these people know me. That's not fair. They all say,
It is not fair. It is definitely not fair because that's what I said to you. I was like, you look exactly like I expected, but it's because the first time I heard your voice, I saw your face. So
yeah, exactly.
Dude, okay, this next one is from Kyrn. So I already knew what Cam looked like, but I had thought for about 40 episodes that Brendan would have long black hair with a thin frame and glasses, like an emo nerd, but unironically cool. ? This is like
I do not think you have that voice. No.
Well, I mean, what voice do I have? You were saying that
you have the voice of an ex-wrestler.
Okay, you were telling me like. Oh,
like
that was
the voice of the person you are. Like you have the voice of like guy who watches UFC. You have the voice of like a big fan of Colby Covington.
Yeah. Oh God. Why you always gotta flip it up? He's like compliment, massive negative.
Yeah, you have the voice of a guy who would own several red hats.
Oh, great. And then you're like, oh, you have the name of some aristocratic
You have the name of someone who would own several red hats too.
That is not fair. This is my question. What do you see the Y2K thing? Like, there was that all the computers BSODed.
CrowdStrike, yeah.
Yeah, that's wild, actually. So, funny thing, there's a massive Lorcana tournament, 2K player this weekend. We're actually recording this on a Friday. We usually record on a Sunday.
And tournament software is, so incredibly reliable and always up already that I'm sure nothing negative impacted that here.
2,000 players are trying to fly into Dallas-Fort Worth. 1,500, 1,000. Yeah, I don't think they're all going to make it, brother. It's pretty bad. So it's pretty bad.
That means you should drop out of doing commentary and compete because you're about to get like a smaller field.
I think I'm going to be the only commentator there.
You might be the only commentator. Wow. They should call me. I won't fly in, but they could put my face on a screen. I know a lot about Lorcana, for sure.
Yeah. Next one's for Platypus.
Did you catch that burp in the middle of Lorcana?
No,
I wanted to draw attention to it. I hope everyone heard that. They better not edit that out.
So there was one 2 podcasts ago where somebody mentioned they're like, oh, at 10:48 there's this sound. And I went and looked and it wasn't there, so I went to 10:46. And you were speaking, and in the middle of your sentence, you just go, and you actually it was legit, like straight from the meme. I don't know how the words coalesced in a way that it sounded like that, but you actually just like randomly did a Haktua like in the middle of your sentence.
Like one thing that'll happen is I'm not good at public speaking. I'm good at like the putting everything together. But I don't have good breath control. And so I talk and I talk and I talk and I talk and I talk. And sometimes what'll happen is like I'll get hiccups. And I have to like stop talking and control my diaphragm because I talk too much. I don't breathe. Yeah, it's real. I have Yapper's disease.
Yeah. Next one is from 8899. So they say, I'm levying further evidence against the Cam thesis regarding my voice. Had no clue that Brendan looked like that. Thought he was a nerdy, skinny, pale guy who went to the gym. I love how he added who went to the gym at the end, too.
I mean, you talk about it enough, right? Like, you have to be someone who goes to the gym.
Yeah.
I don't know why all these people hear, like, ex-wrestler and think nerdy, skinny, pale guy, though.
Maybe that I'm giving, like, a smaller frame in my voice.
Crazy. Like, I don't know how many wrestlers these people have known, but they're all like this. Like, they're all exactly like this.
Wait, I actually didn't see this one. I bet this is a joke, but this one's from Cog Elvis. They say Brennan sounds like he looks. Cam sounds like a scrawny nerd. I did not see that one.
No, I believe
Really?
that. I do. My voice is like very bright, high pitched. I don't. Yeah.
Someone said I feel like you have like I do feel like the end result of your voice is a little bit higher pitched. Like it's not a super low voice, but you have like this kind of bass in it.
I have like a lot of bit of like an undertone of like a high speaking to it, right?
Yeah.
Like I could talk like this, but that's not really how I feel comfortable talking.
But there's something going on in the back of it, like the bottom of it, if that makes sense, where it's like I can tell there's some mass behind it. You know?
I don't know. Like I could be one of those people who just like, yeah, this is actually how I talk, bro. I'm not putting this on. I just talk like this.
You see the Colby fight? Fucking robbed.
Yeah.
Fucking robbed him.
But yeah, I don't know. I talk like how I talk. I have an air or like a lilt or like a brightness into it. I don't know exactly what it is, but I can feel it when I do it, when I talk.
Yep. All right. Well, if you want to get your question read on next week's podcast, shoot us a comment on YouTube and we will get it queued up. When is Deadpool's Diner again?
Is that like coming up right here?
Yeah. So next week. All right. How you feeling about Cassandra Nova? Think it's going to do the thing?
I think it's going to do the thing. I'm going to play a lot of that dumbass card.
I think it's clearly going to do the thing. I do think they would have OTA'd Arishem in some way if it was not going to do the thing. I think they feel confident it's going to do the thing.
Like I when I look at that card, I look at it like, okay, so this into Absorbing Man on 3/4 against Arishem is game winning. Against everything else is like pretty good. And so that's kind of interesting to me. I wonder if she's like one of those cards that's just like this card blows ass if you play it after turn 3, though. But I don't think that's necessarily all that bad, right? You look at, say, old Angela or Thena, right? We play plenty of cards that like kind of suck ass if you don't play them on time. And so I think it's probably fine.
Well, let's talk about some of these Ajax decks in regards to the specific list. You can tell me if these have changed because these are pre-OTA lists as well. The first one is Ajax. This is like a Kitty Pryde Tina shell. So Kitty
Is
Pryde
it the
Tina
one that
has-
runs Mysterio and Mockingbird?
Yes, sir.
Have cut Mysterio and Mockingbird for Sage and Juggernaut.
Okay, so Sage and Juggernaut, Kitty Pryde, Dina, Hazmat, White Widow, Angela, Jeff, Hope Summers, Nocturne, Shang-Chi, Ajax.
Yep. So that's where I'm at with Ajax right now. His major upside is just it's really easy to put him in a deck like this. Like that's the big pitch for Ajax is once you have Hope Summers in the list, which you want Hope Summers so you can do the final turn Ajax Hazmat stuff, it becomes very clear what kind of deck you should be. And that's how this deck started, right? Like I sort of reverse engineered it from that. It was like, all right, I'm playing Ajax. I want to be a Hope Summers deck. If I want to be a Hope Summers deck, I want to be an Angela deck. I want to be a Athena deck. I want to be a Kitty Pryde deck. That's basically how the deck happened, right? It was basically starting from the standpoint of like, I feel like Sarah is a dog shit way to make that happen. And I'd like to play a non-dog shit way to make that happen. And the only one really available to me is Hope Summers. And then the rest of the deck just sort of came with that. And this was a great deck when I played it on before the OTA and after the OTA, after I made the changes that I made. It was my best deck for the first day of that as well. And I think that it is just very clearly, when you look at this is a good cards deck. It just does a lot of work. It does a lot of work. It's like very, very clear what this deck is trying to do, which is points and interaction. But one thing that's interesting about including this package is you don't have to make real sacrifices to get it in there, which is to say Athena decks need to have Shang-Chi in them, and having Shang-Chi usually means you have to give up some portion of your Darkhawk support or whatever, right? But because this package is 2 cards instead of 3, you're not giving anything up.
Do you think we could swap that Juggernaut for Cassandra Nova next week?
Probably. I just think that like when I think about Cassandra Nova, I'm going to want to lean into her further. I don't think she's like, again, I think she's one of the many cards where it's like, this is okay with Ajax, but not really what you care about, right?
Yeah.
If anything, Cassandra Nova's release is going to make Ajax worse because people are going to be playing more Luke Cage. Like, That would be
But
mine.
I think in perpetuity will make the card better. So maybe the initial response is like a heavy Luke Cage meta, but then as the metagame share of Cassandra Nova decks potentially goes down in the future. You don't think it matters? You don't think it matters?
The gap, but it's like, imagine they made a card that was like, it buffed some cards. Imagine they made a card that was like buffing some cards, and they were like, "Oh, this is a huge buff to Gilgamesh." No, it's not. It's still a Blue Marvel card, right? Like the gap between every other card and Blue Marvel for Gilgamesh is the same as the gap between every other card and Hazmat for Ajax, except there's not even like a budget Hazmat where like Khazar, at least. We don't even have a Khazar for Ajax. There's just not something that's good enough at doing that. Fun fact, by the way, Ajax, that's the Francis guy from Deadpool 1. Where he's running around yelling, "Where's Francis?" That's Ajax.
Seen that movie. I love that movie. But I have my memory when it comes to movies that I have I've seen like a while ago. It's really, really bad. I feel like I just kind of delete them from my hard drive. Like I don't remember shit.
Yeah, he's played by the guy who played. I think he's played by like the recast for for one of the recasts for Dario Naharis in Game of Thrones, actually. Anyway, he's the bad guy in the first Deadpool. He's the guy. Like he's the final fight. He's the bad guy. That's him.
How are you feeling for I know you mentioned that you were kind of indifferent about Deadpool's Diner. How you feeling? Are you still kind of feeling indifferent in regards to the new mode?
I'm hopeful that it'll be compelling. Okay. I'm worried every time they change a gameplay aspect of the game, because that is the thing that to me is the glue of the game.
Interesting. And I don't think you're wrong there or anything. I think as a more casual player, I'm excited and I welcome shakeups to the gameplay. But that's also because I don't have the infinite content loop of grinding for X position on the ladder, right? It's all just like, for me, it's just arbitrary numbers because I'm not pushing for.
This is what I mean when I say I don't like saying shit that's like.
Well, that's a relevant perspective. It's not, you're not kind of shitting on the common man or like, I mean, it's just you have a different perspective. I think it's actually relevant. It adds to the conversation rather than sort of detaches yourself. Like, I think it's a relevant thing to say. But you do have a content drip that I feel like other people have less, right? Which is like this high end kind of grind and like the number and things like that, which is fine. But I welcome changes to gameplay because of that, and I'm super excited for a new mode, to be honest. Anyway, well, if you enjoy this podcast, what you do is leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Be sure to leave us a comment. Let us know if you're buying the 12 matte black borders and if we should buy them as well. Still thinking about it, by the way. I did, per your advice, I did hit that spotlight cash during this episode, and I did one tap Ajax, so.
Ooh.
Yes, sir.
One tap. That means it was good advice. You can tell because you got lucky. That makes it good advice. Anything you one tap, it was like, you can't get mad at me.
I'm ascending to the bourgeois class of Marvel Snap slowly but surely. Twitter's @BrendanAPG and @KMBestMS. KM is streaming in the evening, sometimes not on hot locations and during Twitch drops.
Well,
when they happen.
Yeah, I streamed on the most recent playable hot location when Muir Island was the hot location. It was like, oh wow, that's crazy. I actually get to play the game today. Like what a cool thing. I get to play the game on a Wednesday. That's so nice.
They need to bring back I feel like it should be once a month, the boxing gym one that gives you double boosters.
Yeah, Fogwells.
Yeah. They should bring that back. Anyway.
Do we have a main topic today? This is normally the part where you say, hey, let's get into our main topic, and then we talk about it for 2 minutes, and then we end the podcast after doing 50 minutes of Q&A.
I mean, we talked about Ajax.
Okay, hell yeah. All right.
I feel like we talked about a lot of Marvel Snap this week.
Actually did talk about way more Marvel Snap than normal.
Yeah. The whole thing is a main topic.
We're ruining this for our fans. They don't want to hear about Marvel Snap.
Transition to becoming a Marvel Snap podcast.
We're working on it.
Yeah, this is we're
by episode 80, episode 80 of this podcast, we might be a Marvel Snap podcast.
Yeah, maybe. working on it. Anyway, thank y'all so much for listening. We'll see you next week.